introduction to this trial. These remarks are not a charge on the law. I will instruct you on the law in greater detail at the end of the trial before you retire to consider your verdict. But this is an explanation of the procedure that we will follow in this trial so that you may better understand what's happening. The defendant is charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime, the elements of which will be explained to you later. He has pled not guilty to these charges. He's presumed to be not guilty of these charges. He cannot be found guilty unless the state presents evidence which convinces you, the jury, of his guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. The charge is simply the documents by which the case comes into court. Your purpose as jurors will be to decide the facts of this case. And out of all the people who were summoned to come here for jury duty, out of all the people who live here in Colleton County, out of all the people who live here in the state of South Carolina or any place else, only the 12 of you who will deliberate can decide the facts of this case. And you'll determine the facts of this case from the testimony which will come from this witness stand, together with any exhibits which is made a part of the record or any stipulations entered into by counsel. It is especially important that you perform your duty diligently and conscientiously and in conformity with the oath that you took, because ordinarily there is no way to correct an erroneous determination of facts by a jury. Now, just as only you can determine the facts of this case, as the presiding judge, I am the judge of the law. You must accept as correct the law as I stated to you, then deliberate and decide. I cannot tell you what the facts are. You cannot disagree with me as to what the law is, and even if you disagree, you must follow the law as I stated to you. You take the facts as you find them to be, the laws I give it to you, you deliberate and you decide the case. Until I tell you that it's time to do so, you cannot discuss the case with anyone, including your fellow jurors. You cannot discuss the case with family, friends, or anyone else. The attorneys in the case, you cannot discuss it with them or any parties or anyone else that might be connected with the case. Should you discover that a fellow juror is violating that oath and that order, you are to bring that to my attention. It's also vital that you do not seek information outside of the courtroom during the case. That means that you're not to search internet websites, watch television reports, news reports, any other form of social media accounts of the case, because you are sworn to decide this case based on the facts as you determine them to be, based on evidence presented in the case, as well as the law as I give it to you. Now, later in the process, I will appoint one of you to serve as the foreperson of the jury, and that person will have the responsibility of serving as the spokesperson for the jury. That person will have the responsibility of presiding over the jury deliberations, and that person will have the responsibility of completing the verdict form representing the unanimous verdict of the jury. In just a moment, the Attorney General will make an opening statement in which he will explain the issues as he sees it, or as the Attorney General sees it. Following that, the defense counsel will have that same opportunity. Then we'll begin with the presentation of testimony from witnesses. I look forward to working with you on this case and to keep the case moving as reasonable as we can keep it moving, but we will not rush, but take the time necessary to have this case fully presented to you. We'll now proceed to opening statements by the state.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. On the evening of June 7th, 2021, at the defendant's property off Moselle Road in Colleton County, his son, Paul Murdoch, was standing in a small feed room and some kennels they had on the property. About 8:50 p.m., and the defendant over there, Alec Murdoch, took a 12-gauge shotgun and shot him in the shoulder, in the chest and the shoulder, with buckshot. And the evidence is going to show it was a 1,000,000-to-1 shot. He could have survived that, but after that, another shot went up under his head and did catastrophic damage to his brain and his head. The evidence is going to show that Paul collapsed right outside that feed room. And just moments later, he picked up a .300 Blackout, which is a type of ammunition, but an AR-style rifle. And the evidence is going to show that the family had multiple weapons throughout the property, picked up that .300 Blackout rifle, and opened fire on his wife, Maggie, just feet away near some sheds that used to be a hangar. Pow, pow. 2 shots, abdomen in the leg, and took her down. And after that, there were additional shots, including 2 shots to the head that, again, did catastrophic damage and killed her instantly. The evidence is going to show that neither Paul nor Maggie had any defensive wounds. Neither one of them had any defensive wounds, as if they didn't see a threat coming from their attacker. And the evidence is also going to show that both Maggie and Paul were shot at extremely close range. The evidence is going to show it's called stippling. It's almost like a tattoo, that when you get shot very close to a weapon, it leaves marks that the forensic pathologist can see. They were shot at close range and they did not have defensive wounds. And the evidence is going to show that the defendant, Alec Murdoch over there, told anyone who would listen that he was never at those kennels. But the evidence is also going to show from these things that every one of us, most of us carry around in our pockets, that he was there. And he was there just minutes before, with Maggie and Paul, just minutes before their cell phones go silent forever and ever. Despite what he told people, I was never at those kennels, the cell phones are going to show otherwise. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Creighton Waters. I'm with the Attorney General's office, and I'll be the lead prosecutor. I introduced myself before. With me is David Fernandez, Savannah Gow, John Metters, Don Zelenka, John Conrad, and Johnny James. A lot of lawyers. This is a big case. It's a very complicated case, and that's why there's so many people working on it. Sitting back in the row, we have David Owen, who's the lead investigator. We have Lieutenant Charles Gint, who's one of the agents, Special Agent Ryan Kelly, and Special Agent Peter Rudolphy. Some of the agents that are working on the case, as well as Investigator Isaac Toledo, who's working on the case as well. There's some of the witnesses that you'll hear from as we go through this case. The judge talked to you a little bit about him being the judge of the law, and he gives you the law. And I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the legal concepts before I turn back to those facts. Just remember, though, he's the judge of the law, so you take what he says, but I'm going to explain to you some of the legal issues from my perspective before we talk a little bit more about the evidence in the case. And the first thing is right before you went to lunch, y'all all took an oath. Everybody in this courtroom who's got involvement in this case takes an oath. You know, attorneys take an oath to become an attorney, take another oath to become a prosecutor, judge takes another oath to become a judge, witnesses take oath on the stands, law enforcement take oaths to become law enforcement, but y'all took an oath as well. And the reason why is that y'all have the most important job in this courtroom. Every one of you raised your hand and said that you would well and truly try this case. And it's the most important job here because like the judge said, he's the judge of the law, but y'all are the judge of the facts. Y'all are going to listen to what comes from that witness stand and judge those facts. But you also have to be mindful of that oath. That oath requires you to do that hard job, to make that decision, to call the strike when you see it. It's the same oath. It's just as important as any other oath. This might be the most important in this courtroom. The judge mentioned reasonable doubt, and he's exactly right. It's the state's burden to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt. That is a cornerstone of our country. I wouldn't have it any other way. It's a burden we welcome. It's what we want. It's a system that has been well tested and true, and we take that burden to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt. But I want to remind everyone that the emphasis is on reasonable. Okay? It's not any doubt. It is reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt is often defined, and again, you listen to the judge how he defines it, but reasonable doubt is a doubt that would cause a reasonable person to hesitate to act. To hesitate to act. And when you hear the evidence coming from this stand about this particular case, I submit to you, you won't hesitate to act. Again, remember the emphasis is on reasonable doubt. The judge mentioned the charges, and there are 4 of them. First indictment accuses Alec Murdaugh, to which he's pled not guilty, but it accuses him of murdering Maggie Murdaugh. The second indictment accuses him of murdering Paul Murdaugh. The third indictment accuses him of possessing a firearm during the commission of a violent crime, that being the murder of Maggie Murdaugh. And the last one accuses him of possessing a firearm during the commission of a violent crime, and that being the murder of Paul Murdaugh. And what does that mean? What is murder? Well, the judge again is going to instruct you. It is the unlawful killing of another with malice aforethought. And what is malice? Malice is a mental state. That's ultimately going to be for y'all to determine as to what was going through Alec Murdaugh's mind when he committed these crimes. What is malice? Malice has often been defined as the intentional doing of a wrongful act without just cause or excuse. It is the intent to inflict an injury under circumstances that the law would presume an evil intent. An evil intent. And when you look at the circumstances of the crime, when you look at what led up to this crime, the evidence is going to show that there was malice aforethought. Aforethought, what does that mean? It means it has to exist at the moment you commit that crime. It doesn't have to be planned. It doesn't have to be planned for any long period of time. It just has to exist a split second before the crime is committed. But when you see this crime and you hear all the circumstances, the evidence is going to show that aforethought existed for a while. It existed for a while in the mind of Alec Murdaugh. You're also going to hear about circumstantial evidence. And a lot of times people hear, oh, it's just a circumstantial case. But the law says otherwise. The law says that circumstantial evidence is just as good as direct evidence. And what's the difference between the two? Direct evidence is supposedly about the storm out here, from what I'm told. Direct evidence is if it's sunny outside and a witness goes outside and it's sunny and they come in here and they get on that witness stand and because they saw it raining, they sit on the stand and said, I was just outside and I saw it raining. I saw it raining. That's direct evidence. They actually saw it raining. But to give you an example of what circumstantial evidence is if the witness goes into a room where all the curtains are drawn, and when they go into that room, it's sunny outside and everything's dry. And while they're in that room, they see it darken behind the shades. They hear thunder. They hear the wind blowing. They hear the sound of raindrops on the roof. And then they open up the door, and it's not raining, but everything is wet. There's puddles in the driveway. There's puddles in the street. There's puddles in the yard. There's limbs down all over the ground. And then they come in here and say, yeah, it was raining. Didn't actually see it raining, but those circumstances are beyond any reasonable doubt that it was actually raining. Now, I guess it's possible that somebody could have been standing outside their window and beating a drum to sound like thunder and blowing a fan to make it seem like it was the wind and somehow got enough water to coat the entire neighborhood. But that's not a reasonable doubt. Everybody understand that distinction? That's not a reasonable doubt. Another thing, and this is crucial, what you're going to do in this particular case, is determine credibility or the believability of witnesses. So it would be your job to look at the evidence, the exhibits in the case, but also the witnesses and decide if it's truthful, if you believe it, if you can rely on it. And the judge is going to instruct you that you can believe one witness against many or many witnesses against one. You can believe all the witnesses' testimony or part of the witness's testimony. It's up to you, first individually and then as a product of your deliberations. And what you're required to do there is just to rely on that good old-fashioned common sense. Does it all fit together? Is it corroborated? Does it fit with what you would expect? Does it fit with what you expect how real people would act? Does it seem real? Does something seem a little off? Does something seem a little off? You're going to see video statements of Alec Murdaugh. You're going to see body-worn camera of him at the scene when law enforcement arrives. And hear what he says. And hear what he says about that night. You're going to hear 3 recorded statements on video that he gave with law enforcement. And you're going to hear how things progress about what he says and what he says he did that night. Watch those closely. Watch his expressions. Listen to what he's saying. Listen to what he's not saying. Use that common sense. Does this seem right? Or does something seem a little off? Does something seem a little off? I mentioned that Maggie was killed with a .300 blackout rifle, an AR-style rifle that chambered in .300 blackout ammunition. And you're going to hear evidence that back in Christmas of 2016, Alec Murdaugh over there bought 2 .300 blackout AR-style rifles. And then not long after that, one of them went missing from Paul's truck. And time went by, and in April of 2018, Alec Murdaugh replaced that rifle and bought another one. 3 total blackout rifles that they had. One of them went missing years ago, and a replacement was bought. You're going to hear evidence that Paul and his friend were using that replacement gun. They were standing right outside the side door to the gun room of the house, and they were sighting it in, firing down into a field. And the cases were ejecting. The cases are the empty shell from a bullet, and they were ejecting out into the flower bed right there. And then there's a range across the street, and they shot it there, and there's cases ejected there as well. And they were shooting that 3rd replacement gun just weeks prior to the murders, prior to June 7th, 2021, when Maggie and Paul were murdered. And you're going to hear forensic evidence that the cases that were found in that flower bed and the cases that were found across the street at that range were ejected out of the same weapon that fired all the cases that were around Maggie's dead body, that killed her. It was a family weapon that killed Maggie Murdaugh. And you're going to hear evidence that of those 3 blackouts that Alec Murdaugh purchased, when law enforcement arrives at the scene on June 7th, 2021, he can only account for one of them. He can only account for one of them. And that replacement gun is nowhere to be found. You're also going to hear evidence that the type of ammunition the exact brand, the exact model of ammunition that was used to kill Maggie, S&B, 300 blackout ammunition, and 147 grain bullets. That exact ammunition, boxes, empty boxes of that ammunition, is found all over the property. The very same brand and model of ammunition that was used to kill her is found in multiple locations throughout the property. And you're also going to hear evidence, the same thing about the shotgun shells that killed Paul. That federal double-aught buckshot unfired rounds were found on the property, as well as Winchester #2 turkey loads, the 2 rounds in the shotgun that killed Paul. Family weapon, same ammunition. It's on the property. You're also going to hear evidence that about a week after the murders, Mr. Alec Murdoch's father had died, Mr. Randolph, and about a week after the murders, he shows up early in the morning at his parents' home, where his mother still is in late-stage Alzheimer's, on Alameda in Hampton. It's uncharacteristic for him to show up early, uncharacteristic for him to show up at all like that, and he comes in and he's carrying something in a blue tarp, and he takes it upstairs, and eventually law enforcement finds out about that, and they go upstairs and they find a wadded up, very, very large raincoat in a blue color, could look like a tarp, and you're going to hear evidence that it was coated with gunshot residue on the inside. On the inside. You're going to hear other evidence of gunshot residue. You're going to hear that there was gunshot residue on Alec at the scene. You're going to hear the evidence that there was gunshot residue on the seatbelt of the car he was driving. You're going to hear evidence that when law enforcement got to the scene, he had gone and gotten a shotgun, Paul's shotgun.
Jay got a spot. Check 1 2, check 1 2, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12.
Check, check. Mic check. Test. 1 2 1 2 1 2. There's that one. 2-2. How's that look?
one more slot now. Jesse? Got it.
Let me know when you're all ready.
That's the sign.
Is it on? Yeah. When they start making the real noise and digging there.
Please identify yourself.
I will. I know that gig. Hi, I'm Steve Wagstaff, W-A-G-S-T-A-F-F-E, and I am the San Mateo County District Attorney. You saw what happened in court there today. For those of you who were there, those who were not, the private defender program, we do not have a public defender in this county. The private defender program was appointed. 2 lawyers were designated. John McDougall and Eric Hove, attorneys from the private defender program, will represent him. The case was put over to February 16th at 1:30. No plea was entered. It's to give them time to speak with their client, get the police reports from us, and at that point, the case will proceed at the next court appearance. And that's what happened today. Again, there are copies of the charging document available to anybody who wants to see that. We did charge 7 counts of murder, 1 count of attempted murder. They are charged. You'll note that the attempted murder is count 5. We have charged these in the manner in which the order which we believe that they occurred. But again, this investigation is 2 days old. There's an awful lot more to learn, and that's what the charging document has. That is the only document that is publicly available for you at this point. There have been many, many search warrants, etc. in the case. Those are sealed and not available, so you don't need to ask for them at this point. Other than that, I'm open to questions.
Why you asked for no bail?
Go, Jesse?
Explain why you asked for no bail.
Yes, under California Constitution, anytime somebody is a danger to the community, the court has the right to hold them in bail on any charge. This is the highest number of charges, 7 counts of murder. We have not had in San Mateo County before a case with 1 instance of 7 murders at once. He is not a citizen of this country. There's plenty of motive to run. For that reason, it was, to me, a very straightforward and simple request for no bail.
Are you going to be seeking the death penalty?
We will make that decision. Under our charges, we charge the special circumstance of multiple murder. Multiple murder, what that means under California law is the defendant's punishment, if convicted on these charges, could be life without the possibility of parole or the death penalty. Making that decision on the death penalty is something that will take place over the course of the next many, many months. As we do, we have so much more to learn about this individual, about the victims and their families, and the harm that's been inflicted here. So we have a long way to go before we make that decision. But at this point, those are the 2 possible penalties.
What would you say to those grieving family members right now?
The horror of what has occurred. I have, in my career, dealt with many, many, many families who have suffered horrible losses on that line. And so while I have not walked in their shoes, I certainly have learned of their shoes. And I would say to them that the one thing they can count on is that the San Mateo County District Attorney's Office will do everything in its power, working with the Sheriff's Office, to make sure that justice is done here and that the right outcome occurs. And we will be talking to them. Under Marcy's law, the Victims' Bill of Rights, victims' families have the right to convey to us what their opinion is on every step of the decision-making regarding penalty and punishment in this case. So we will be talking to them for their views. They matter to us greatly.
Based on the fact that he gave you a statement.
We'll go here.
Yeah, based on the fact that he gave you a statement about what he did in Half Moon Bay, can you tell us whether you think that he might plead guilty since he has already given you a statement?
He now had, the question was, for those who didn't hear it, is now that he's given us a complete statement, do I have any feeling that he might plead guilty? The answer is he had 2 attorneys appointed for him today. It will be a long road before that happens. That would be something that would surprise me greatly, but it's happened. I've had that happen in my career where somebody did that, and it could. At this point, we're treating it as my expectation is he will plead not guilty, and the system will go forward. The penalty if convicted of all the charges would be life without parole or death.
Correct that he did give you guys a statement. Was there attorneys present for that, and how would you characterize the cooperative?
I would phrase it in this way. He was cooperative with the sheriff's detectives who did the interview. It was done through an interpreter, Mandarin interpreter, and my office was watching it from outside. But
He did not have an attorney.
he did not request an attorney and did not have one.
Do you have a possible motive on
A motive? We do have a feeling on the motive at this point based on what he has told us. I'm not going into that.
You said he's not a citizen of the U.S.? Where's he from?
He is from China.
Was there an inflection point that, is this a long simmering, I guess, feud with co-workers? Was there one instant that just sparked this, or was it just a build-up? Do you have any information about that?
We do have information, but again, I won't be going into those details at this point. You heard the defense attorneys have articulated to the court that they're concerned about the publicity up front. I am too. I want to make sure that for these crimes that occurred in San Mateo County, that a San Mateo County jury gets to hear it. We don't want to transfer to another part of the state. That's why from this point on, the sheriff's office will not be making public statements about the case. It will all go through my office, and we're going to do it very limited for the reason that we want to make sure that this man gets a fair trial, that the victims' families get justice through a fair trial, and that the case gets tried here in the community in which it was committed.
How long do you think it took to plan this?
Again, a detail I wouldn't go into at this point.
Did you leave a note inside the car before he...
I'm going to go down here first.
Did you leave a note inside the car and what did the note say?
There was a note inside the car. We're not revealing that at this point. I plan to learn everything I can about this man before I make that decision. And I want to learn everything about the victims and the impact that this has, how widespread the impact is on the victims' families. And at that point, with all the information, we have a process that we follow. Most DA's offices do, where we will go through a long process. We give the defense attorneys a chance to come in and present mitigation to us. We try to find out everything we can. We want to know mental illness is out there. We have so many things we need to learn. And for me to say what I'm going to pursue now would be precipitous.
What kind of contact have you had with the surviving victim and the other victims' families?
There have been, to my knowledge, this is dated by yesterday, we've been in contact with family members from 6 of the 8 victims. We are reaching out, and the coroner's office is working with us to reach out to all the victims' families. Yes, sir.
What tell us a little bit of the narrative of the day of the event? It's a little bit confusing. If you could just tell us what you know.
Well, we know a great deal, and again, that's part of what I'm not going to go into, other than to say, as you know, that there were 2 different sites in which this occurred. The first one was over there on San Mateo Road. The second one was over at the Concord business. The first one was a mushroom farm, and that the initial victims were 4, I believe. I'm looking at you, Sean, at any point if I have it wrong. But 4 victims at the first site, 3 victims at the second site of our 7 murder victims. But in terms of then going beyond it, time intervals, how he got over to the sheriff's substation where he was arrested, that we're going to leave for the future.
What's the support are victims' families getting?
We have victim services from both my office, the San Mateo County District Attorney's Office, as well as the FBI. FBI was out there that first night with their victim services people providing also, and we are coordinating with them to be able to give them resources to provide for housing, to provide for counseling, to provide for funeral services. The state of California has a very good victim services support network. Governor Newsom made reference to it yesterday in his presentation out there about how the victim services, he's provided more and more money to try and help make sure that victims' families don't have to just wander without support.
Other than the FBI, are there any other federal agencies involved in
There have been some others, the U.S. Attorney's Office has reached out to me to offer any support that we need, and there have been some others that have provided assistance. Not to go into at this point, the FBI is the only one we're mentioning at this point.
So you touched on this a little bit, but can you put this in context in terms of what you've seen in your career, just how horrific this is? Have you seen anything like this before?
The question is what I've seen over the course of my 46 years as a prosecutor. This is by a large amount, in San Mateo County, the single most victims of homicide in one course of conduct within a short time period. We have not had that before. I think the largest we had had before of one single action, not over a course of months, but over an action was 4 in San Bruno when there were 4 people executed there. So this one is in a category that is way beyond anything we've ever dealt with. I'm sorry that we have joined the list of counties around this country that have had to deal with this. Well, I always hoped that would not be something that would occur in my career, but now that it's here, we'll step up and we'll see that justice gets done.
Steve, any other charges, special enhancements that you're considering down the road?
Nothing beyond what we did now. We think we have charged this case based on the facts as we know them now. Again, it's always fluid. If something else were to develop, more will be learned. But at this point, we think our charging document adequately and thoroughly covers the conduct that day.
Steve, is there any indication
That would be going into his mental state. And we do know the answer to what your question is. I'm just tantalizing you by saying that, I guess. But the answer is we do know, but I don't want to go into those details at this point. The question was whether or not the suspect, the defendant, I would now call him, whether the defendant had targeted these people. And that is something we do know the answer to. And again, that would be going into details I don't want to do at this time.
Steve, is there any indication this was any sort of copycat from the Monterey Park shooting?
The question was whether this is any evidence of copycat of Monterey Park. And we believe the answer is no to that. Not just simply we're not sure. We believe the answer is no. Yeah, anytime on any crime, any felony crime that somebody uses a handgun or a rifle, any firearm, uses a firearm, under California law, that enhances the penalty. It adds, in a case like this, for each count, it adds 25 years to life on top. Now, again, if the penalty is life without parole or death, that's fairly academic. But it exists. If a robbery occurred down the street here, and somebody used a gun, they could get up to 5 years for the robbery and 25 to life for the gun if they had used the gun. So that's why we add those enhancements in. I'm sorry, could you say that? That's a detail we're looking into, and I don't want to go into that at this point.
How long has he been with us?
At least a decade. Question was, how long had he been in the United States? At least a decade. I don't know the exact number yet, but at least a decade.
Brushes with the law prior that you think might be relevant?
We think that there had been some contact previously. We're running that down. At this point, the Sheriff's Office has that on their very long list of tasks to perform, and that is one of them. Basically, in a case like this, what you do is you try as best you're able to go back to the day the person was born and determine every single thing that happened in their life. School, education, grades, everything we can. Maybe a little bit more difficult here because of his background, but that's what we have asked the Sheriff's Office to do and told them they have time to do it.
Is there an incident in another county that you find might be relevant?
We've heard about it. I think you guys might have found it. I know the Sheriff's Office found it, and we certainly are, the Sheriff's Office is aware and looking to get all the precise detail on it.
What about the gun? Can you tell us about make, when he bought it?
Not going into when he bought it, where he bought it. I can tell you it's a handgun. I will say it's a Ruger, but and it's a semi-automatic firearm. What type of a gun, I was asked.
Is he here legally?
We've been talking to the State Department to get the clear answer to that. I don't want to suggest whether he is here legally or illegally till we find out what exactly his status is. He did have at one point proper papers to be here. Whether that was still in existence, to be determined. Right. Good. You're stumped. Great. Thank you all. Yeah, go ahead.
Where the shootings took place physically, is it the trailer, the field, or what facility?
I will mention to you that there were shootings in the trailer and outside the trailer. I'll tell you that much.
Can you see whether the farms, we've learned a lot about the conditions these workers were living in. Is your office going to look at what's happening there in terms of the living conditions?
I think our office will focus on the prosecution, but I have spoken with the county manager of this county, Michael Callaghy. I have spoken with Dave Pine, the president of our board of supervisors. They have been out there. They have seen some of the squalor that exists out there. And the answer, I believe, as the county manager told me this morning, which is now we know about it and now we have to act on it. So I believe there will be steps taken to deal with that situation. My focus in my office's focus will be on holding this man accountable for what he did. Okay? Great. Thank you all very much. I appreciate it and appreciate you being here. Take care.